Today is National Children's Grief Awareness Day, and it's observed to let grieving children know they are not forgotten in the midst of their grief. Debbie Mask is co-founder of the Children's Grief Center. Welcome to you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Great to have you. And also Jade Block with us today, Executive Director. Great to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Good morning to both of you. And let's just start by telling people what Children's Grief Awareness Day actually is and why it's so important.
We need a day to remember that children who have a loved one die are feeling the pain of that loss as well as adults.
Sure.
Children do grieve. It looks different than adult grief. And we know that nationally, about 1 in 20 kids will experience the death of a parent before they're 18.
Wow.
That's about 5% of the population.
That's a huge percentage.
Sure, but that means that 95% of the population don't experience the death of a parent and have no idea how to respond to those kids. Often they're isolated, even in their classrooms, in their Boy Scout troops, and at their church.
That's right, and to know that they're not alone, because I mean, obviously 95%, obviously a lot bigger of a percentage, but that said, that 5% needs to know they have somebody else who they can talk to, who understand what they're going through, and really not just sympathize, but really empathize. And so, you know, what you're doing is so special. You're raising awareness about the issue of grieving. So how are you actually doing that? Tell us.
Not just raising awareness by letting our whole community know that this is an issue, but then also offering services and support. The Children's Grief Center provides free, open, and ongoing support groups for young people between the ages of 5 and 25 who've had a loved one die.
It's a wonderful thing that you do that, and of course, as co-founder, you got involved with a personal story. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Debbie?
Yes, my husband and I lost a son who was 16, and when we moved to Albuquerque, we realized that there wasn't anything here for children, and we had experienced attending groups for our daughters,
right,
where we lived. So we became involved with a group of people who were already more or less interested in doing something for children, but mostly from a clinical standpoint.
Okay.
And so the Children's Grief Center happened, and you know,
it gave people a chance to bond with each other too, didn't it?
It did, and the real strength of the Grief Center is that children can come and their life is no longer, there's a new normal in their life.
Right, it is a new normal. I mean, how do children actually grieve? I mean, how do they do it? It's like you said, it's very different from how adults grieve. How do they do it?
Oftentimes, you know, they don't know what to say.
Okay.
And so they come and they realize that the other children that are there are going through the same thing they are. So the anger, you know, the feelings of, you know, I just want to hit something, or I just don't know what it is I'm feeling inside.
Confusion and pain.
Sure.
You know, it is a tremendous amount of pain that young children don't know how to verbalize.
And this gives them an opportunity to kind of learn with each other, which is really a good thing. And so if we were advising people who are watching, how should we tell parents and teachers and really any other adult who's involved in a child's life, how do we tell them to acknowledge and support that grieving child?
Well, there's a few things not to say, first of all.
Good to know.
And, you know, it's not really helpful as a grieving young person to hear something like, well, you were lucky to have him as long as you did.
Yeah.
Or, thank goodness he's in a better place. Or he's not suffering anymore.
That's not helping at all.
Or, I know how you feel.
When you don't.
When you don't.
Interesting.
Things that are helpful to say are really an honest, empathetic, I am sorry for your loss. This must be really tough.
Let them know it's okay to feel bad about it, right?
Yeah, and can you tell me a little bit about your special person who died? What were the holidays like with that person? How are they going to be different this year?
Well, and I would imagine a lot of them get closed off. How do you draw out those feelings and emotions from the children in a way that's not intimidating to them?
Sure. Well, you know, just offering a safe and supportive environment is really what it's all about. And at the Children's Grief Center, kids can be in other groups of kids their own age going through the same thing. You know, one thing that a lot of these kids have in common, I would say every child I've ever met, and the Grief Center has been in existence for 10 years now.
Right.
Every child that I've ever met who's had a loved one die in some way feels responsible for that death. And that's such a heavy, shameful burden to carry. I've heard little girls say, if only I'd gotten better grades, then my dad wouldn't have had that heart attack.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
So if they're given the opportunity to talk about it and yet not be not have those beliefs taken away from them,
right,
then they start to come to an understanding on their own.
Well, and the holidays are around the corner. I mean, I would imagine it's just a tremendously difficult time for everybody.
Yeah.
So, you know, why is it, and how do we make it better for children during the holidays?
Well, don't isolate them.
Okay.
You know, a lot of families who've experienced the death of a loved one find that their social circle really doesn't know how to respond anymore, and so they kind of want to back away and leave them alone.
Right, right.
And, you know, I think that a lot of us just don't know what to say or how to respond, and we don't want to bring it up. We don't want to freak anybody out, so we act like nothing happened. But the truth is, the bad thing already happened.
Right.
You're not going to make it any worse by bringing it up.
Good point.
You know, families struggle when, you know, the mom that made the cookies isn't going to be there this year, or the dad that hung the lights isn't going to be there this year. And at the Children's Grief Center, we have lots of materials that we've put together. It's about communicating everybody's expectations.
Yes.
It's about making a plan. What do we want to do this year? How's it going to be different?
Right.
And it's about being gentle with ourselves.
And like you said earlier, a new normal, and that's okay. I mean, you had to experience a new normal yourself, and I'm sure it was very difficult, and probably still is very difficult. But if you have people that you can lean on who can help you through the process, I guess that's really just the best way to do it and get through it. And we really appreciate you helping, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are saying, how am I going to get through this season?
5%?
Yeah, absolutely. So where can our viewers go for the resources?
Well, they can certainly call the Children's Grief Center or visit us online. If you look up Children's Grief in Albuquerque, we're going to come up right away.
Fantastic. Well, Debbie, Jade, thank you both so much for being here. We really appreciate this, and I wish you both a healthy and happy holiday season.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, and we'll be right back.